Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome aboard. We're here again. It's time for Syracuse basketball postgame presented by our friends at Krause Health. Brent, Mike Waters from syracuse.com. And whoa, baby, Mike, what a game at the Carrier Dome. Syracuse goes into halftime down by 14 points. They're down by 20 points at one point in the second half, and it is not looking good. And then the Orange go on a 40-12 run, completely own the second half, and a huge comeback win. Syracuse 75, Notre Dame 67. Tale of two halves in a lot of ways, Mike. And, Jim Boeheim has talked often. I believe he's said in the past that his team couldn't press a pair of pants. But today the press made a huge difference for the Orange, buddy. Boeheim had 29 points, Marek Dolezaj with 18. It was quite the afternoon at the Dome.
Yeah. One real quick thing. Shout out to our buddy Mike Waters. It's Mike Curtis here.
Did I say Mike Waters?
You said Mike Waters.
I get the mics mixed up. Sorry about that. Mike Curtis, not Mike Waters. Mike Waters and I do a video show too, so sometimes I get them mixed up. My apologies, sir.
No worries.
It says it right on the screen there. I can't even read it either.
It does. That's like when people email you and like.
It's a good thing it's theirs, because when I screw it up, and people know who you are. So anyway, wow, what a game we saw today.
Yeah, that was one of the most impressive comebacks I've ever seen Syracuse pull off. And it was all sparked by Buddy Boeheim. I mean, 29 points, that's a career high. He made 6 threes, and they were all timely. Like, every three that he made was very important. And when he's like going on a shooting streak like that, Syracuse is pretty tough to beat.
That's what Buddy Boeheim can do. He can get hot like that. Now, this is the hottest he's ever been. 29 points, career high, 6 threes, career high. He's now a top 10 all-time three-point shooter in Syracuse history. And that's why Jim Boeheim will insist he needs to be out there. Boeheim saying after the game that, teams have been face guarding him this year, making it tougher for him to get open shots. But you said it, Mike, the timely shots, getting open, some with defenses in his face. And three-pointers. Notre Dame was the team hitting threes throughout the game. Syracuse really struggled to cover the shooters. We knew coming in, Notre Dame was a really good offensive team, a really good three-point shooting team. That defense was just awful for Syracuse for most of the game, first half, part of the second half. They switched to the press. And it's interesting, Mike, because, I'm sure you do as well. I follow people that cover Notre Dame and most of the teams that are in the ACC. And I saw a few people that cover Notre Dame tweeting throughout the game saying, man, they're not good against full court pressure. Syracuse should go to pressure. They should go to press. And I'm like, man, they're down by 20. What difference is it going to make? Well, that's why you play the games, because it really showed today. So you spent some time in the Notre Dame post-game festivities. What were they saying about losing a 20-point lead?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. Coach Mike Bree actually just got out of the presser, and he said when they saw that press, it kind of messed with them mentally, and it took them back to that Georgia Tech game where they blew, I think, a 16-point lead in sort of the same fashion. So he said the pressure got them like attacking the 2-3 zone even less, so it affected their half-court offense as well. He pretty much said like everything about that full court pressure just messed with them mentally, and it was hard for them to rebound. It was not. He tried to like encourage them in timeouts, but it wouldn't translate to the floor.
Mike, let's look at some stats from this one, and I actually want to start with the second half in particular. Syracuse outscores Notre Dame in the second half, 43-21. Syracuse shoots 46% in the second half to Notre Dame's 32%. Syracuse 6 of 12 from three-point range, and rebounding. Syracuse outboards Notre Dame 22-11, including 8 offensive rebounds, which was absolutely huge. So that goes to the overall stats. Syracuse and Notre Dame both shooting about 44%. You showed how much Syracuse tilted that more to their favor. Very appropriate 44%, by the way, for Syracuse, right? 10 of 22 from three-point range. It's 45% overall, a perfect 11 for 11 from the free throw line, and they out-rebound Notre Dame 36-31. So there's that trend. Once again, Syracuse, I believe, now 12-0 on the season when they out-rebound their opponent, but they were down big time in that category throughout the game, Mike. Until the second half, Notre Dame goes cold. Syracuse getting those rebounds, getting their own offensive rebounds as well, and converting them not just into three-pointers. Marek Dolezaj was great in the paint, and just getting the points that they needed and just chipping away slowly but surely before you look up and you say, holy cow, Syracuse is on a 29-5 run and Notre Dame just completely shut down.
Yeah, I think another big difference, like you said, was that free throw shooting. Like in the first half, both teams, I think, only took 4 free throws. So at one point, they were both 2 for 2. And then you look at the end of the game, Notre Dame's 3 for 4. So they didn't get to the line pretty much for the rest of the game. And Syracuse went 11 of 11. And they're the best free throw shooting team in the ACC. That's one of their strengths. So when they're active and attacking the basket, get into the line, that's how they were able to kind of get back into this game and complement three-point shooters.
Mike, to hear you say that is just so weird because Syracuse for so long has not been a good free throw shooting team. Any longtime Syracuse basketball fan knows that's just never been their forte, right? I wrote a column earlier this week and I referenced a video that Jim Boeheim did in 1989, Boeheim on basketball. It's a gem and it's on YouTube if you want to check it out. Old school Syracuse hoops. And even in that video, Jim references their struggles at the free throw line. Now, the irony there is while on that video, teaching free throws, Boeheim makes 32 in a row while he's teaching people free throws. He goes on a heater at that point, but he just could never get his team to be successful there. This has just been the perfect storm of good shooters. Obviously, the lack of a true big man in the middle. You got Marek Dolezaj, who has gone from middle 60s to 85%, the best free throw shooter in the ACC. And today, Mike, he was 6 of 6 from the free throw line. That's huge. He ends up with 18 points on the day. We told you about Buddy. Just amazing day for him. 6 of 10 from three-point range. That's a career high. 29 points, also a career high. Quincy Guerrier, 9 points, 14 rebounds on the day. 9 defensive rebounds, 5 on the offensive glass. We mentioned how big that was in the second half. I'll tell you what, Mike, we got to give a big shout out here to Robert Braswell, who comes in the second half, 3 points, 5 rebounds for the Orange. He was great on defense and made the most of his minutes. There's a guy coming off the bench making a difference. Kadari Richmond with a few buckets and 3 steals on the day. He obviously makes a big difference for the Orange defensively with Joe Girard struggling again, but not the case often to hear a bench player making a big difference. But Braswell, Jim Boeheim noted it, took a charge at one point, did some scrappy things that don't show up in the box score, and he was big.
Yeah. I like Robert Braswell a lot because he comes off the bench and he gives you whatever you need at that moment. Whether he's hitting open three-pointers, whether he's playing defense, rebounding, like you said, he had a big charge there in the second half. He's like the ultimate role player. He plays his role and he knows what it is. It's to provide a spark off the bench in a multitude of ways. And I think a big reason of that is we saw Alan Griffin struggle, 5 points, 4 rebounds. Joe Girard, 5 points, 3 assists. When Boeheim starters are struggling, it gives them more flexibility to kind of go down the bench and insert some of those guys.
So, Mike, Syracuse is in a position here where I talked with Joe Lunardi earlier this week, and as much as Joe is always willing to joke around about how wrong he is about Syracuse through the years, he's not wrong to say that they probably have to win out if they're going to be in consideration for the tournament. Every opponent they have down the stretch, Notre Dame included today, is either a quad 2 or quad 1 game. Duke will be a quad 1 game Monday. Georgia Tech after that likely will be a quad 1 game. Maybe their win over Virginia Tech at some point moves into quad 1. But every team they play is between 40 and 65 in the net ranking. Notre Dame actually had the lowest net ranking of the teams they're going to face going forward. It's likely, Jim Boeheim noted this week, that they're going to add a game against Clemson on March 3rd. That's a quad 1 game. So, look, you have to give the committee reasons you have to basically challenge them to not include you, right? And the best way Syracuse can do that, frankly, is to go 5-0 down the stretch. And today was step 1 towards that. But they're on the outside looking in, even with, if they lost this one, they're probably out, period, and couldn't build their way back in unless they just went on a torrent stretch down the run here and maybe won a game or 2 in the ACC tournament as well. They have to start better. This has been a case of slow starts a lot this year. Notre Dame exposed that again today. But the point you bring up, Mike, is one taken in that Alan Griffin struggles today. And usually when he struggles, it's a part of a loss. It's a part of a Syracuse team that didn't play well. But, with Buddy Boeheim playing the way he did and other players kind of picking up the slack, it certainly made up for it. Jim Boeheim noted, Mike, he was minus 16 in this game tonight. Not good.
Yeah, when he's not shooting well, it typically shows in the rest of his game. I mean, he came out and had a big block for, I think it was on Notre Dame's first possession. And when we see that type of Allen Griffin, we know that he's engaged, he's locked in defensively, and it usually translates to the other end with his three-point shooting. But he just didn't have it going today. 2 for 6, 1 for 4 from 3. I think he needs to take more shots, be more aggressive in whatever he's doing, whether that's on defense or offense.
Appreciate everybody in the comments. We're going to hop in there shortly and respond to you guys and gals here. I did want to bring this up too, though, because my man Mike Curtis was right in the center of this. So on Jim Boeheim's radio show Thursday, what we're doing these days and have been, frankly, for years is, when Jim is on a radio program or in any public forum, what he says matters. So we report on that. Mike just doing his job, listening to the show. One quote in particular about Duke's Jalen Johnson went absolutely bananas. Mike's phone, you might hear it ring a few times during this show because Mike tweets about that. It gets picked up by Jay Billis. And in this world of the internet and how things go viral, a number of national commentators out there pick up on that. And Mike's tweet turns into people looking at the situation because Jim said he feels that he was asked about Duke, who Syracuse plays Monday. He feels they've been a better team without Jalen Johnson. Now, the Jalen Johnson situation has been interesting because he opted out, 3 weeks before the season ends, and that's been a hot topic of debate. But, Mike, what was it like to be at the center of that? Because, boy, did that take off, and Jim Boeheim responded pretty strongly after the game in this press conference that he was only saying that he feels Duke's a better team without Jalen Johnson. He supports his decision to opt out. But Jim was linked to some things that he didn't say in this situation, including by Jay Billis.
Yeah, it was very interesting Thursday night to just send a tweet out like I normally do. And then over the next 24 hours, it's getting talked about and discussed by so many people. What I saw that Jay Billis actually retweeted it and added his 2 cents and said he differed with Boeheim, and this isn't the first time he's said comments like this before. I pretty much knew that this was going to be like a big headline in the news. But one thing I do want to point out about what Boeheim said, it's not that he said that they're much better without him. I think it's the fact that he said that guy was hurting them.
Right.
And they've had 2 monster wins since he's opted out, which, give or take, that
objective,
right? 2 okay wins. one Wake Forest, one against NC State, where Jalen Johnson actually played. He only played 6 or 8 minutes, but he did play in that game.
And Jay Billis made the point that there was some terminology used, again, not by Jim, which was unfair that Jim was kind of thrown into this entire thing. But there were references to camp and posse and people in Jalen Johnson's ear about why he should leave. And Jim didn't say any of those things, to be clear. But when Jay Billis made his comments on SportsCenter and elsewhere and the way these things go viral on Twitter, it felt like Jim was kind of looped into that. Whereas you heard it, Mike, you were listening to it and reported on it. Jim's comments were what we just said there. It was about Johnson, his play, Duke as a team. That other stuff Jim didn't even get into. Now, Jay's passionate about that, and Jay certainly makes, I think, a fair point there about how that whole thing's been handled and how people have discussed it elsewhere. But Boeheim got looped into that. Regardless, Boeheim pretty passionate at his press conference and even said, listen, if you're listening to my radio show for material, let's just say he disagree with that, which is ridiculous because what you say on a radio show is public record. What you say at a press conference is public record. What you say in a public forum, people hear it. And it's your opinion, and you're a public figure, one of the biggest in Syracuse, New York. Your words matter. So I think Jim was just frustrated that his little radio show has turned into a story week in and week out. That's a little naive because you're Jim Boeheim. What you say in a public forum is something people are going to be interested in.
Yeah, I think it's funny how college athletes, high school athletes, college coaches, I don't think they really recognize the platform that they have, that anything they say could have an impact on someone else, or it could go viral, it could get picked up. And it's just like with college kids and going on Instagram, that's a public forum. No matter what you do on that space, there are people watching, there are people listening, and it could end up like this.
It's a new generation, Mike, that's just used to being in a public forum like that, but they get desensitized to it a little bit. I've got a 14-year-old who's probably on her phone as we speak, and I try to tell her that as much as possible. It's like, look, the internet's forever. You can delete it. It's still there. So a good lesson there for everybody out there, including on this show when I got Mike's name wrong at the beginning of the show. That'll live in infamy now because I called him Mike Waters instead of Mike Curtis. Appreciate your patience there in the comments. You guys have been really going at it here, and I appreciate everything you're saying. So let's respond to a few of these, Mike. A lot of people just excited. I love the comeback, insane fun. Getting into the press was big for Syracuse. Thomas brings up the free throws. Dale, watching us down in Genesee, Pennsylvania, said consistency on defense in the second half would go a long way to making them a premier team again. Great comeback, though, from Syracuse. Tom is in Cooperstown, excited. Michelle saying Buddy buckets. Brian brings up a good point here, though, Mike, and it's something that's maybe gone a little quieter than it should from this game. Quincy Guerrier came alive on the boards, 14 rebounds, hopping on those missed shots for Notre Dame. It was a huge part of that comeback for Syracuse.
Yeah, it was reminiscent to kind of how he played to start the season before the Orange went on that COVID pause. And he was rebounding, he was scoring. But tonight he really gave Syracuse what they needed, particularly on the offensive boards. When like we said, when Syracuse is rebounding the ball, they typically do well. They typically end up winning the game. But yeah, Quincy's impact was just phenomenal.
Notre Dame is an interesting team, Mike, because they're a great offensive team, as we saw. But when you looked at the numbers and some of the trends coming into this game, they weren't a particularly good rebounding team. They weren't a particularly good defensive team. A lot of the other stats, they were bottom half of the league. And one thing I was intrigued by, off of what we said there about Quincy, was Notre Dame averaged, I want to say this correctly, the average amount of time a team has per possession against Notre Dame actually led the country, 18 seconds per possession. Syracuse was going to get a lot of second and third chances, and in the second half, we finally saw that come to fruition, as we mentioned there with Quincy Guerrier. So Notre Dame was playing as well as anybody in the league coming in because they were just so hot offensively, but some of their weaknesses really shined through, as we said, in that second half. Brian says, I guess coach can keep his job, right? Jer, sorry about that. Let me get rid of this on my screen here. Jer says, great to see the Orange put on the squeeze and playing with heart. Now hope that they have the same desire to keep winning. And Christian saying the man-to-man press really threw Notre Dame off the game. That chaos was great for Syracuse. Chris noting that Kadari and Braswell brought positive energy and ball movement and did it off the bench, Mike. I mean, Syracuse is noted for a team that doesn't go deep on its bench, and Buddy's a starter and plays big minutes, and he was the guy in this game. But that bench was big for Syracuse in the second half, those two in particular.
Yeah, one thing I do want to kind of make note of is the difference when Syracuse sharing the ball. When they're moving the ball around, every guy gets a chance to touch it. That's how they should be playing. They shouldn't be coming down, giving it to Buddy on the post, watching him go one-on-one, take a turnaround mid-range jump shot. Same thing with Alan Griffin. When they start to get in that one-on-one mindset, it typically doesn't bode well. And
that is a great point.
Yeah, when they're sharing the ball and Buddy can catch it, that gets him in rhythm and he's able to score more.
And one guy who, unfortunately, it looked like Joe Girard gets a steal, goes up to the hoop, can't finish the layup. Notre Dame goes the other way, hits a three. It's 58-41 at that point, and you're saying to yourself, they just can't crawl out of this hole. By the way, 20-point comeback for Syracuse ties the biggest comeback in the ACC this season, as noted by Pete Moore from SU Athletics here. Miami also came back down 20 points against Purdue in the ACC Big Ten Challenge earlier this season. I have not seen, I'm sure our friend Mike Waters will dig this up. He's good with this kind of stuff on where this ranks in terms of comebacks in Carrier Dome history. I would imagine it's top 5. Got to be right up there, 20 points down to come out of this hole and win. And I see Rob noted here, Mike, that we've seen more of John Bolajok than we've seen Jesse Edwards lately. Can we expect that trend to continue? I think so, because Jim has noted a couple of times how good John Bull's been at practice, how Jesse has not been. And when he was out there today, Mike, very vocal in the zone. John Bull is slowly but surely starting to give himself a little bit of a presence in the middle of that zone.
Yeah. He gives them another big body to pretty much bang down low and grab rebounds. Today he had, what was it? He didn't score. He didn't grab any rebounds. But just the fact that you have that extra body down there presents problems. And it bodes well for that 2-3 zone.
He set himself back a little bit in the Boston College game because he comes in at the end of the first half and they got in that little scuffle with BC. Yeah. And I think they basically it was like offsetting penalties in the NFL. Everything got washed out, technicals and everything, but he headbutted a dude at one point. It's like, you can't come in limited minutes and I remember Jim Boeheim after that game saying, John, you can't come in and do something like that. But clearly he's been showing some stuff at practice. Jim was noting that in his press conference after the game. And I mean, Mike, you got 3 centers, right? Jesse Edwards, John Bolajok, Frank Anselm. Now, Frank was out for a while due to COVID protocols and was actually starting to look pretty good at practice from what we've heard. But it's incredible that you have 3 centers on your bench, but it's Marek Dolzaj, who's played that position all year and has, as Jim said, been unquestionably the MVP of this team.
Yeah, they've been pretty good. And one thing I want to make note of is next game against Duke, that's going to be a big one. That's going to be all eyes are going to be on that game for more reasons than one, and not just basketball.
That's right. That's right. I'm sure there'll be some reaction to Jim's reaction to the Jalen Johnson story. And I don't have the assignment right in front of me, but is Jay Billis calling that game? That's a big Monday game on ESPN. Sometimes he gets that assignment on Monday night. I have not seen at this point, but it'll certainly be interesting if Jay calls that game, given how strongly he criticized Boeheim for that. And it's a quad 1 game for Syracuse. Mike, the Syracuse-Duke rivalry has been terrific in recent years. Duke hasn't had a typical Duke year, right? But this is huge. This is a huge, huge game in the context of the here and now. It's been weird to see Duke down and Michigan State down and Kentucky down and all the Blue Bloods just not having a good year. But nonetheless, a huge matchup Monday night at Cameron Indoor. And boy, is that going to be weird to watch a game in an empty Cameron Indoor Stadium.
Yeah, I was just about to say, could you imagine what the Carrier Dome would have been like after this comeback?
Whew.
I know those fans would have been going crazy.
Now, the track seems to be that there'll be fans at the North Carolina game on March 1st. We noted that March 3rd, more than likely, they're going to reschedule Clemson for the Dome. And lacrosse season, shout out to the women's lacrosse team who dominated Loyola today. That's a number 3 Loyola team, by the way. They crushed 18-6. We're going to start seeing fans back at the Dome. But for now, it's just another great moment that we don't know how. I mean, those fans would have been going bananas. Now, here's my question. How many of them would have left early? Syracuse down 58-41. Syracuse fans tend to do this sometimes, Mike. It's like, I'm going to beat the traffic, get out of here. But the fans that would have stayed would have been amazing. And now we're going to watch Cameron Indoor with just the cardboard cutouts there. So we'll see how Syracuse does Monday against Duke. That's when Mike Curtis and I will be back with you here on Syracuse Basketball postgame after that one. As noted, a huge game in a lot of ways. Thanks to you for watching from wherever you were today. Thanks to our friends at Krause Health. More coverage to come from Mike, myself, Mike Waters, Donna DeTota, the whole crew, bringing you coverage throughout the day today on Saturday and on Sunday throughout the weekend as well. You guys enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thanks for watching today. Thanks, Mike. We'll talk to you again Monday night, my friend.
Thanks, man.